But, it always comes down to like the mental aspect of it and, you know, the sustainability of something. If you do it in, moderation, small baby steps, it's going to be a whole lot easier than cutting out entire food groups or, blocking off times that you can only eat or, just completely not consuming food. One thing to keep in mind is that our body is working 24/7. There's no clock on it. It doesn't punch out for the day and clock back in, the next morning. It doesn't stop. Our lungs are still working. Our heart is definitely still working. Our digestive tract is still working. We still have like these billions of little tiny cells that are still like cruising around the body the whole time. And it's really important that we still, our brain is still working. So it's really important that we're still fueling our body. Our body doesn't know what time it is. It doesn't care, if you stop what 7 o'clock is or, 7 o'clock PM or 8 o'clock in the morning. Like we need fuel for the most part because our body is running 24/7. And if you, I know a lot of people know my schedule. I don't eat dinner until 9 o'clock at night, but I'm also up really early in the morning. And you saw me eating Cheerios at 5:30 in the morning this morning. So my range of consuming food is from 5:30 in the morning to 9 PM at night. And then I sleep for maybe 6 hours and get right back up and do it again. So like I said, your body isn't aware of like what time it is. If you're moving, you're up and you're going, you need to continually be fueling that body. Those times where we do feel sluggish, we have that brain fog. That brain fog is a big key indicator that we're not getting enough fuel for our body. So most people, and it's a very sensitive topic because there's fasting, people who do ketogenic diets fast. There's different religions that, participate in fasting. And so, there's this idea of fasting, like cleaning your body, resetting your body, and you might feel better afterwards, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on sort of deep down inside on the cellular level that's not necessarily, the healthiest for you. So, doing it for an extended period of time without getting any nutrients in the body can be, a little bit not the best thing for your body. So it's always important that we're fueling our body. If you imagine your body being a car, and you have the things that help your car run are fuel, and food is going to be that fuel for your body. If we're not getting that, if your tank's on empty, you're not going to be able to get anymore. You can't go from point A to point B, and you're going to, the same thing with your body. If you're not putting fuel in there, you're going to feel really sluggish. You're going to be really tired. You might have some headaches. And these are all of these like side effects that happen when you're not putting fuel in to your body. This idea of fasting between a certain time, it is sort of depriving that body. If anyone's fasting, and the best way to think of it is like our muscles are like a sponge, and we hold, when we're eating food, it breaks down into glucose, which is stored in the muscles as glycogen. I'm sure some people have heard of that. Might be a little bit sciencey there. But what happens is if when we sleep, our body is still working 24/7. So when we're sleeping, our body's still taking, that fuel from our muscles and, still spreading it around the body. So when we wake up in the morning, our muscles are sort of like a dried sponge. I don't know if you've ever seen your like sponge sitting out on the counter where it's really, really dried out and there's not a whole lot in there. So if you're trying to work out on, like that dried sponge feeling, there's no fuel in there, there's no water in there to like keep you going, then you might feel a little bit sluggish. You're not going to have your best performance. You'll definitely perform better. You'll feel stronger if you have a little bit of food in you before you start working out. But that's the idea of what intermittent fasting does, is it uses up all of those nutrients. So the idea of intermittent fasting is that if you take all of that, carbohydrate storage away from those muscles, or that glycogen storage away from those muscles, that the body's going to start using the fat. But that's not necessarily the case. Fat takes a really, really long time to break down. So oftentimes it can use other, stuff in the body like protein, which is what your muscles are made out of. Your heart's made out of protein. So it might start breaking down those cells because it's easier to break down than fat. So the idea of intermittent fasting, breaking down fat faster, is not necessarily the case. But, you do get some of it. There's the Atkins diet out there, which was like a higher protein, low carb diet. And, there were some long-term studies done on that there was actually a lot of like injury to the heart, because the heart is a protein. So if you are taking away carbohydrates, your body, the next thing that it has to break down, the next easiest thing for your body to break down is going to be that protein. And again, that comes from muscles, that comes from, a little bit in your organs, that is definitely your heart. Your heart is made up of protein. And so, there's a lot of cardiovascular issues that come along with, restricting certain food groups, not getting enough fuel at that time, which is something that I think people sort of overlook because they're so focused on losing weight in a very fast amount of time, that these long-term like health effects are can be really serious. So that's also something to keep in mind. That is sort of coming back to that dried up sponge thing. If we don't have the fuel for that, we don't necessarily burn more calories. Again, calories are, and the amount of calories that are there based off of surface area. So when we're looking at burning calories, it really depends on the surface area. I have a twin brother who's 6'7", I'm 5'2". He's definitely going to burn a lot more calories even just sitting there than I'm going to burn calories sitting here. Same thing if we both were to work out, doing the same thing. If we were to both go run a mile, he would burn a lot more calories than I would. And it's really based on the surface area. The more muscle mass you have, the more calories you're going to burn. So does fasting help with burning more calories? Not really. It does come back to the metabolism, which is based off of your muscle mass and how much energy it takes your body to do what it needs to do to keep you alive. Let's talk about intermittent fasting as it sort of creating social anxiety, or making food, thinking about food too much, because what happens is a lot of times, when people are setting their intermittent fasting boundaries, they'll say, okay, I'm not going to eat until 11. I'm going to stop eating at 6. I'm going to consume all my calories between 11 and 6. But, summertime coming up, people are vaccinated, people are going to start going to weddings. So I know you said you had a couple weddings coming up. But, if the wedding starts at 5 o'clock, goes for maybe about an hour, then you make your way to wherever the reception is, you sit down, dinner's maybe not served till 7:30 or 8, and that's already past your time limit. And so what happens is you're looking around, you're sitting at a table with a bunch of people who are having fun. They're drinking champagne, they're eating, they're talking, they're laughing. Everyone's enjoying themselves. And you're thinking about food. You're like, oh, that looks really good, but I can't have that. Oh, I'd love that glass of champagne, but I can't have that. Oh man, that wedding cake looks really good, but I can't have that. And so instead of enjoying the moment, you're being consumed with these thoughts about food, which is really, really difficult and creates these really anxious situations and these awkward, times that, you could be having fun and just enjoying the moment and living and enjoying some fun foods. And one night is not going to completely throw everything off for the week. So and that's often why I don't promote any diets that restrict certain food groups, any diets that restrict calories, or you're set on a time, is because there's a lot of other things that go on that are really important to your life and your well-being and your mental health, that when you start thinking about food all the time and you start saying, okay, I can only do this and this, and then that's all consuming. That's too much stress for anyone to think about. So it's one reason why I don't promote the intermittent fasting. I'd rather people, eat whole foods that are, have a lot of vitamins and nutrients in it, and eat some protein, eat some carbohydrates, because that's what your body really needs for it to perform its best, to stay healthy, to keep you out of the doctor's office, and to make sure you're strong, and that you can run around with your family or hang out and go on hikes or do whatever. So that's always the better option to do that. But, it always comes down to the mental aspect of it, and, the sustainability of something. If you do it in, moderation, small baby steps, it's going to be a whole lot easier than cutting out entire food groups, or, blocking off times that you can only eat, or, just completely not consuming food. Again, one thing that happens a lot with fasting, and I think people that don't realize this, but it was something that I talked about in the detoxes and juice cleanses is that when someone does a fast, even if it's for a couple days, you know, the weight that they lose is water weight. That is, you know, everything's being cleaned out from your digestive tract. And, you know, when everything comes out of your digestive tract, there's a lot of water that's pulled into there to help move it along. And so the majority of the weight that's lost in fasting situations is water weight. And that's what most people don't think of. And that's why, you know, you can lose 10 pounds of water weight because muscles hold a lot of water. And, you know, it's your muscles that's holding the water. It's not anything else that's holding the water. And depending on what you're eating, you might hold more water than usual. So, and same thing, if anyone's starting a keto diet, usually in the first 2 weeks, it's all water weight that's lost. It's not anything else. And then, you know, followed shortly by, you know, muscle mass or lean muscle mass that's lost, because protein, again, is easier to break down than fat is. And fat's that long-term sort of very slow moving weight loss. And that's why when people expect to lose weight and, you know, why can't I lose 20 pounds in a month? Well, because if we're focusing on fat, you know, it takes a long time to break down. It takes a long time to get out. So, you know, realistically, that's what people, I think, need to know, is that that's usually sort of the last thing that's broken down is fat. Like when I start to look at their food logs, because people say I'm eating really, really good and I'm working out every day, and I start looking at what they're eating. And the first thing that I always look at is how much food are they eating versus, you know, their body size and what type. And more than half the time, I have to tell people to eat more, because your body, you know, once it gets to a certain point, it's going to be like, okay, I feel really comfortable at this point. But, you know, again, to kick up that metabolism sort of goes back to that surface area thing, where you have more surface area, you're going to, you know, your metabolism is going to kick up and you're going to burn more calories. But if we're eating the right foods, if we're eating more protein, you know, that's going to help build that lean muscle mass and maintain that muscle mass, which is what we want. And then we're going to start using fat as a fuel source. And that's where we're going to start, you know, seeing some more weight loss and really leaning out. But you have to eat more calories to do that. And so a lot of people use MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal, I think, is not the best, because it puts everyone at 1,200 calories. It doesn't matter if you're 5'10", 180 pounds, and you say you want to lose weight, it puts you at 1,200 calories. You know, I did it just to see, because I heard this rumor that it puts everyone at 1,200 calories. I did it, put me at 1,200 calories. I had some other people put it 1,200 calories. All different types of body types, all different heights, weights, athletic. You know, I work out a lot. I definitely would need to be eating like closer to 2,000 calories because of how much I work out, not 1,200 calories. My body just won't function well with that. And so it's really interesting when people have this idea that they need to be at 1,200 calories. And, you know, 1,200 calories is the caloric intake for a toddler. That's how much we shouldn't be eating at 1,200 calories. So we definitely need to make sure that we're eating an appropriate amount for our body size, and everyone's going to be different. 1,200 calories is going to be different than, you know, me, and we're probably the same height, and approximately the same weight, but I, you know, am training for a marathon. I need to be eating closer to 2,000 calories. So definitely, like, you know, knowing what your body needs and not restricting it. Eating more calories is actually going to be, you know, sometimes beneficial for you. So just not restricting it down to 1,200 or 1,000 calories. There's this idea of like a slow metabolism, because people are like, oh, my metabolism's really slow. It really does come down to calories in versus calories out. But, you know, if you take someone who thinks that they're overweight, and they might be, you know, they're still going to have their body's still going to burn more calories than my body is, just because of my mass. Regardless, again, if you take someone who is, you know, weighs 250 pounds versus me who's 135 pounds, and we both, again, go run a mile, that person is always, regardless if they're overweight or not, still going to burn more calories than me. What we want to get people to do is build up that lean muscle mass, because the more muscle mass you have, the higher the metabolism is going to be, because again, that creates more surface area, creates that dense surface area, where your body is like, oh, now I really need to start working a little bit harder to like keep this going. Whereas if you have less muscle mass, then, you know, it doesn't have to work as hard. So that's like the easiest way to think about it is like the more muscle mass you have, the higher the metabolism. So to do that, you need to be able to consume calories to build up that muscle mass. It needs to be, you know, healthy whole foods. It needs to be protein. It needs to be carbohydrates. It needs to be healthy fats. And then along with that is going to be some resistance training. That's how you're going to build up that muscle. And so those are really the important things to think about if someone's wanting to lose weight is you have to exercise. It's going to come down to that. You have to lift weights. You have to, you know, make sure you're getting the right foods. I hate to say it, but I know there's a lot of grocery store chains out there that have these prepackaged frozen dinners that people like because they're inexpensive and they're like, oh, it's healthy. But it's not necessarily like they're like maybe vegetarian frozen meals, and you start looking at the ingredients, there's a lot of sugar in it, there's a lot of sodium in it, there's a lot of fat in it, but it might not be the, you know, the healthiest option. So go get that fresh produce and then cook that up instead. You know, make those salads, make, you know, that chicken or, you know, whatever lean meat you have, lean turkey, and use that instead, or fresh fish instead of, you know, something that's been processed or packaged, you know, and thrown together.
Right.
One thing I want to get out about fasting is that, you know, your body works 24/7. It doesn't matter when it gets food. It just needs fuel. You know, always think about that car. If you want to get somewhere, if you want to go, you know, be able to hike 5 miles straight uphill and 5 miles back down, you need to have some fuel in your body. If you want to go run 9 miles, you need to have some fuel in your body. You can't run 9 miles on a fast. You know, if you, it's always going to come down to restricting calories. Or being in that calorie deficit, not necessarily restricting calories, but you need to be in a calorie deficit. So that means your energy, what you're doing, what you're moving, you got to do more, and your food intake needs to be less than what, you know, your energy output is. If people are looking to lose weight, instead of trying the intermittent fasting diet, first look at how much you're moving. And, you know, especially now where everyone's on Zoom and no one's moving, you know, we're going to the grocery store less, we're walking to the car less, you know, we're dropping off our kids less. So that means we're getting out and moving around. So that's like the first thing we want to look at is really how much are you moving throughout the day? Again, that energy expenditure has to be more than what we're consuming for us to lose weight.